everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and today we're reviewing for you Fairy Ring, a game by Lawrence Grenier and Fabian Tanguy, and Repos Production, who is part of Asmodee. Now, this game is going completely under the radar.
It really is.
It really is.
Like the mycelia underneath the ground.
Yeah. It is. This is a game that we got early access to, but it was like Harmonies, where we didn't realize that we had it really early in Australia. And then we got to GenCon and nobody was talking about it. And I didn't realize it would be for sale there. Also didn't realize that was its big release.
Yes.
And so when we got back, we continued playing Fairy Ring. And this is such a wonderful game.
It's so delightful.
It is so delightful. So we can't wait to tell you more about it.
So in Fairy Ring, we are going to be building a beautiful mushroom village, and then we're going to be guiding our fairy, jumping around all these different mushrooms from village to village to eventually gather the most mana over the course of 2 seasons. At the end of those 2 seasons, whoever manages to get the most mana and have the most beautiful village will be the winner.
Now, to best explain how this game plays, I've set up a 3-player game here. So you can see the ring that is created by everybody's tableau that they're building out. Now, the main mechanic here is drafting, and we're doing that 7 Wonders style, where everyone is going to have a hand of 7 cards at the start of each round, and you're going to be choosing one that you want to play and putting it under your player board in the playing area, and then you are going to put the rest of that hand onto a pile that's going to be passed to the player on your left. We all do that process simultaneously, but then in turn order, the first player is going to reveal the mushroom that they want to build out into their mushroom village, and then they decide whether they're going to place it on the left, on the right of their tableau, or maybe stack on top of the same type of mushroom that they're building. Now, each mushroom has a unique scoring ability, and so you're deciding whether you want to build up with the same type of mushroom and make the scoring ability much stronger, or you want to build across to build out your tableau and to make it that when the fairies come wandering around, it's going to take longer to get through your particular mushroom village. And why is that important? Because each of the mushrooms also has a number in the top left-hand corner, which dictates how much movement your fairy is going to have for that particular turn. So my fairy is over here on Maggie's tableau, and now because I've placed this mushroom down, I'm going to move 3. So my fairy is going to jump 3 spots and now landing on this other player's tableau, and wherever it lands, it's going to activate that mushroom for that opponent. So the Academy is going to give this player 1 point for every movement that I made, which was 3. So this player is going to take 3 mana. But then also, if you have the same type of mushroom that's being activated in someone else's tableau, you get to choose one of those mushrooms and activate it. So I have this huge Academy mushroom here that I'm going to get to activate. And now because I've got 4 Academy mushrooms creating this giant Academy mushroom, it's going to be 4 points for every movement. So 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to be able to take 12 mana because of that turn. So when you're placing a mushroom down, there's a lot of things to think about. How do you want to build out your own village, but then where is it going to land me and what is it going to activate that gives my opponent points, but also potentially me a lot of points as well. It would then move to the next player in turn order, who again places a mushroom and then moves their fairy, activates wherever the fairy lands, as well as their own personal tableau if they have that mushroom. And the game continues like that across 2 separate rounds of drafting from 7 cards, where 1 card is always going to be left over. Now, every time you get 20 mana, you're going to convert that into 1 point on your dial, which is hidden from all other players. And so you don't know who's in the lead at any given time. There's one other element that's going to keep you on track here across the 2 rounds, and that is the 3 variable objectives that are public objectives that everybody can achieve over time. Anytime you achieve this, for example, having 7 mushrooms in your tableau, having 2 mushrooms that are at least 4 cards high, or having 10 of these little fireflies in your tableau, then you're going to place one of your flower symbols on that card, achieve it, which gives you a whole point. So 20 mana, 1 point, and you can achieve those throughout the course of the game. At the end of every turn, first player is going to move on, and at the end of the 2 rounds, the person with the most points is going to win, and then leftover mana is the tiebreaker. So that's how this game plays. Now let's talk about how we feel about it.
Well, first off, this game is just beautiful and also so delightful. I love the theme of this like mushroom villages. I actually didn't know about the concept of mushroom rings. I don't know if I've ever seen a mushroom ring or a fairy ring, which is essentially what happens when a mushroom or mycelia is sort of growing underground, and then you have this like above ground, you have all these cute little mushrooms that just create this sort of ring. And the folk tale is that is like a dance floor for fairies at night, and the mushrooms are like the seats where they like, you know, take a seat and they're like, okay, I'm ready, let's have a bit of a dance. So that is just so beautiful, and there's even some information about it in the rule book. Also, the fact that with my understanding of mycelia, one of the discoveries that they've made is that mushrooms can often feed their own family, even if they're incredibly long distances away, if they've got excess nutrients or if they detect that, you know, their family is in strife. And they'll avoid the other mushrooms, which is like this. I feel like that plays out here. When you land somewhere else, if you have that same mushroom in your own tableau, then they'll both kind of benefit. Like mana will happen for both. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it is really charming, and it's also really unique mechanically.
Yes.
I can't remember a game where you're traveling across other people's tableaus. Actually, maybe there's a couple, but in terms of being part of this medium weight game that's so easy to get into, it's the perfect theme for that. And of course, if you like positive player interaction, this has tons of it, because you are thinking about, well, I'm going to give that player some points, but then I get to activate my mushroom, and maybe my mushroom is more built out and more powerful, like in the example that I gave, and so I'm going to benefit more from that. Or maybe you're just not even thinking about that, and you're just happy to go and jump along and activate all the mushrooms along the way. But there's a really nice positive player interaction. The other part of this, of course, is you are like having to sum out or math out a little bit the number of steps that your fairy is going to take. So anytime that you're looking at the hand of cards and deciding which mushroom to play, you're thinking about, well, okay, if I take this card, this is the mushroom I want, but then that card only lets me take 4 steps, and I really want to take 5 steps, so maybe I take this other type of mushroom that gives me 5 steps. But then also, if you like when you decide on what card you want to play, you also have the choice of placing it to the left or right of your tableau of mushrooms, or of course building up. But when you put it to the potentially here, if I put it to the right, it's going to add an additional step that I can use to get to a mushroom that I do want to activate on my own tableau. Because when you come around to your own tableau, you also activate just your mushroom for yourself. So that's really important, that when you come around to yours, you're hitting those high point mushrooms.
And that is so, like, that is such a great detail, that like for that tension to happen, because it then makes you, when you're the first player, you feel like you've got so much control because you know exactly where you're going to be landing. Whereas when you're not the first player, when you're the second and third or even fourth, you have no idea how the actual tableaus will change, because I don't know if Amy's going to put it left, right, on top. And so me trying to calculate, there's almost like a mitigation of like, okay, which card should I play? If she were to put it on the right, then that's gonna lose me a step, and then I want to make sure. So it's so simple, but it just creates these layers of strategy and risk mitigation,
and it's really fun. And also you have those moments around the table where you're like, yes, I'm gonna land on my mushroom, and then someone places it there, and you're like, no, you did the one thing that I didn't want you to do. Why did you do that? So that's really fun. There's also this type of mushroom called the spring, which instead of activating when someone lands on it, it actually activates as people move past it. But if they land exactly on it, it doesn't activate at all. So you don't get anything for that. And so there's this like, almost like, haha, I landed on your spring, so you don't get anything.
Amy's very good at calculating it just so that if she's going to land on my tableau, it's often in that spring. And it's like,
but you know, it's often not the best strategy, because you want their points to, you know, activate so that your similar mushroom can activate. So, but it is like, there's these little elements of like surprise and delight. There's enough in it that you can mitigate against that, and plus you're seeing every hand of cards as they move around. So you can kind of think about, as with all of these, you know, Sushi Go or any game like that, you can kind of think, well, you know, I do want one of those other mushrooms, but there's plenty of them in this hand, so I'll just wait till that comes around again.
Or the opposite, going, I really need that, but like as I've seen the hands, it's like, it's not in this round, so I'm gonna have to give up on that dream and pivot to something else.
The other really fun tension that's built into this game is not just like whether you place left left or right and how that's impacting on your opponents, but also just do you want to have a few mushrooms that are really powerful, so you're building up, so every time they get activated you're getting a massive amount of points, potentially a whole point, plus, because if you look at the lookout, once you have 4 of those, you get 24 points. So that's like a whole point plus some extra mana. Do you do that, or do you make this really long tableau? And I've had games where I've built out like this, 10, 12 card.
People just get stuck in there, going like multiple turns just stuck on Amy's tableau.
Yeah, because the fairies have to travel all the way around. So maybe they're going to activate your tableau twice if you build up rather than out, but then each time you're getting fewer points. So I really enjoy the puzzle of that and like trying different strategies from game to game. That's been really, really fun. And it's also fun because people tend to take a different strategy to each other as well. So you get these different dynamics of like smaller tableaus that you can travel through or skip entirely, and then these really long forests.
The other thing is with that, the variety of scoring that the mushrooms provide is the iconography is really good in them, which means that it's pretty easy to follow it. But there's enough variety that actually, even though it's a fairly simple game in how it plays out, there's a lot of possible strategies that you can explore. So there's that whole like, do I spread out? Do I try and get every single spring? So as soon as people are kind of coming through, I'm just getting mana for all the people kind of jumping over my springs. Or like Amy said, it's like, oh, there are some that are really, really powerful, and can I just sort of focus and make them really, really long and strong. So I really enjoy every game that I play going, oh, there's something else I can try. Even before we were just about to record this, like I was sort of like getting ready and going, oh, I've got an idea for another thing that I'd like to try next time I play this. And we've played this quite a few times.
We have,
And so that could be like, that's just another plus for me, I think.
And it's a real joy. And so when I think of a game like Harmonies, it's got that quality that is hard to define, that the first time people play it, they are, they're kind of
just charmed by it.
Yeah, they're charmed by it. They play it and they're like,
this is really cool.
And it's just really interesting when you're jumping around the tableaus. It's really fun. And because you're getting points all the time, it feels really satisfying. But often there are quite, big differences in the number of points that people are gaining along the way, depending on their strategy. You touched on iconography, and I just wanted to talk about the components here, because the player board, while you don't necessarily need it in a game like this, it is so helpful here because it reminds you to put the card that you're playing off to the side here, and the pile of cards that you're going to pass to the player on your left once you're done drafting from it on the left here. And there's this little board that shows you who first player is. So first player is going to have this, and they're going to put the leftover cards and they're going to hand that to the next player, which makes it really easy to track who first player is. It's just these tiny little touches that, because when you have a drafting game like that, it's easy to be like, oh, where's the pile? Have you passed it? Are you done drafting? This keeps everything nice and organized, and I really appreciate it. The iconography for the scoring conditions is also super clear, as Maggie mentioned, to the point where we don't even use these reference cards. When I'm teaching someone, I'd prefer just to teach them and them not have to look at this, and I've never found I've had to look at this.
No one's like, oh, what does this do again? It's very, very self-explanatory. I really can't fault anything about this production. I love how you can see the attempts at making it a much greener production. So even like the cardboard insert, all of it actually feels like, it didn't come with like a baggie from memory. It was like it came with like a paper bag, and everything just fits really, really nicely. Even the components themselves, like they're very, very satisfying.
Yeah, these acrylic fairies.
Yeah, the actual wooden pieces of the mana, they're super satisfying when you gain them. And it's almost like poker chips where you're like playing with them. You're like, oh yeah,
the mana, rich in
then
mana.
when you're swapping them for like your point, it's like that's extra satisfying. The actual cards themselves and the artwork is really, really beautiful. So just every element just feels very thoughtful and just perfectly kind of created for this.
I will talk also about the objectives, because they're something that I really love in this game. They're actually an advanced variant, so you can play without these objectives, but I consider them a must-have because they just add this nice extra objective that you can work towards to get a point, which is really valuable because it is 20 mana. But also it's just, it just adds more competitive tension because you're trying to, work your tableau in a way where you can achieve hopefully all three, usually two, but hopefully all three. So that I love that kind of gives me another thing to work towards.
I actually really like that they didn't make them so that like, oh, if you're the first one there, you're the only one who gets it, or you get more if you get there first. Because actually when you first place them out, it's like they all feel very achievable. And it's not until you're actually going through, you're going, actually, I might hit one of them. So just being able to even just hit them and get that positive, like, oh yeah, I got a point for it. That's enough. Like I felt like there was enough tension in that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that they didn't go the route of more like negative, oh, if someone got there first, you'd miss out.
Yeah, because actually this game feels short. There are only 2 rounds, and so you're only going to be drafting 12 cards, and you're going to be as well as your starter card, so 13 cards into your tableau. And so that's actually not a lot of time to get these objectives done, to make as many points. And sometimes people are like, oh, is that it? It's done. Yeah. But it kind of just is the right length that leaves you wanting more. Yeah. And it's right at that nice place where, maybe you can play a game in like half an hour to 45 minutes, and then everyone around the table is like, again, let's go again. So it just has that quality about it.
The last thing to talk about is the player count. So we've actually played this at every player count. Obviously, when you're playing it plays 2 to 4. So when you're playing it at a 2, you have fewer, it's only the 2 mushroom villages, and it's very much more like a back and forth. It plays fairly quickly then at that point, but you miss out on some of that extra interaction and that extra, like other people kind of activating your tableau and just seeing more things. It works fine though.
It works fine, but it's much easier to skip the other person's tableau, and so for that reason it makes it a little bit less interesting.
Yeah. Then at the 3-player count, that's probably like the sweet spot for me, at least.
Me too.
Yeah. So because it's just like you just have enough interaction. There's enough kind of going on. You're going to be activating other people's tableau. There's enough people going to be activating your tableau, and the length of the game is just right. I think when we start going into the 4-player count, it starts blowing out a little bit more in terms of both time, but then also it's like you're kind of mostly going over other
it's still not a long game, but it feels longer because you're waiting for everybody else to play their cards so that you can put your card down in your tableau. So at 3 players it feels like snappy enough, but there's you're paying attention to what everyone's doing on their tableau. That is definitely the sweet spot. There is no solo mode, so just if you're a solo player, please be aware of that. Yeah. So now in terms of our ratings, if you've been playing along this year, it's been a great year for medium weight games, and there's still more to come. But for me, I gave Harmonies an 8. I'm also going to give this an 8, and I love Harmonies. It does activate a different part of my brain. Harmonies is more, Calico-esque. It's really about the novelty of the mechanics and the satisfying, engine that you're building and the way it plays out differently every game. But I think this game is going to have a lot of fans. So I'm also giving it an 8, same as Harmonies. It's going to be at the end of this year, ranking our medium weight games is going to be really challenging.
It's going to be hardly,
which is great.
Contested, So I'm actually going to also give this an 8, even though I gave Harmonies a 7.9. I love both games, but this one does, I don't know what it is, it does win out a little bit more. I think it just feels even more streamlined, but there's still just so many options to try. And even still, I'm still going, oh, okay, I want to try this other thing. Whereas in Harmonies, you're more dictated by what objectives are kind of placed in front of you.
Yeah, and this is a bit more streamlined. There's less admin and upkeep. But Harmonies has solo mode, so it just depends on what's right for you. Very different puzzles. Yeah. But we just want to say that if you have enjoyed Harmonies, and a lot of people have, this is probably the next exciting mid-weight game for us. So check it out. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.